Uncle's Cat. I did my 5 greatest adventure video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. But it actually got me to thinking about 5 trips that I've taken in my life that actually changed me as a person. And I thought I'd share them. So this is an open challenge to everybody. 5 trips, not experiences, but trips that may have had experiences that you feel changed your personality and who you are today. First one is Arctic Bay 1998. I did a 6-hour race, did kind of well in it, actually did great in it. So I was invited to go to this race up in Arctic Bay. Well, I've never really travelled and I was having some issues at the time and all the rest of it, but I went. And I've never been north of Barrie before, so I ended up flying on a plane from Toronto, 4-jet engine plane, to Iloquit, which took about 8.5 hours. And then the same 4-engine jet plane then flew from Iloquit to Arctic Bay and took about another 5 hours, and then landed on this piece of gravel in the middle of nowhere. Really life-changing experience. What that experience showed me was that if I have a plan, and if I execute the plan and I alter the plan, I can overcome. And I did the 100-kilometer race in just over 9 hours and won it easily. The night before the race I got completely drunk, and people were wondering whether I'd even start the race. At one point I was so disorganized I actually was going around begging people in the morning for coffee because I hadn't taken any with me. And we were staying at the old zinc mines camp, so there wasn't really any facilities. So somebody found a sachet of coffee for me that they took from a hotel room on the way up from the States and gave it to me, and then I was running hot water from the tap to make coffee and squeezing it out and drinking it. Very hungover. Anyway, my best races, my best long distance races usually happened after I was very hungover, and this was no exception. What sticks with me about Arctic Bay is going into the zinc mine and doing the race and meeting people there and doing the achievement. But what really struck me was the opportunity to go out on the sea ice with young Inuit children, to jump from floe to floe on the sea ice, you know, seeing the incredible different shades of blue and white in the ice, and just the complete solitariness of running through gravel with no soil and no plants for mile after mile while the sun circles at 3 p.m. for the full 24 hours. It really did change my life in a lot of ways, and I'm very grateful I did it. Going further back in time, in 1979 I had the opportunity to stay at Royal Air Force Base Kinloss in northern Scotland, somewhat north of Inverness, and that was quite life-changing as well. At that time I was aware of the Cold War and stuff like that for obvious reasons, and then but I actually had the opportunity to do an observer flight on a Nimrod, and we flew for around 14.5 hours over the North Atlantic at altitude, finding radar blips, flying down at high speed, cruising beneath the mastheads of fishing boats, so close you could see the colour of the fishermen's eyes. The seriousness that the Royal Air Force was taking in having a nuclear and a military response to the Soviet Union was something I don't think I'll ever get over. The other thing with that was it was a great experience because I actually managed to spend quite a bit of time working with lifeboats and packing lifeboats for the Royal Air Force up there, and that was a fantastic experience, and it taught me, I think, how to pack things, and to this day I pack all the time. In 1986 I was a second-year student nurse in England, and my girlfriend at the time, who I later married, was a third-year student nurse, and we decided, because she decided, to go to Romania because she has this Dracula fetish, I would say. And so we went to Romania, and the idea was we'd go there and fly from Romania to Egypt and a few other places because it was part of the Soviet bloc at the time. And of course before we got there the Romanians managed to fall out with the entire Soviet bloc, so we couldn't go anywhere. But that was a really life-changing experience. I hadn't really travelled much. I'd been to Spain quite a few times for the beaches and the drink. I had been to the United States, which I'll talk about in a bit. But that really taught me something. It taught me about how normal people are in different cultures, I spent a lot of time talking to the guys and the girls there who were actually Romanian. This was about a couple of years before the revolution there. And there's total disbelief that we were student nurses and we could fly and do this. They were told the West was all decadent and multimillionaires and with an oppressed underclass. The actual truth of what was going on in the West they didn't know. And it always makes me think to this day, to actually know a place you have to go there and you have to live there. And you have to go to their grocery stores, which we did. Their grocery stores at that time were full. They were full of canned and bottled peas and carrots and tuna and plum vodka. And that was it. There was nothing else. That was it. Everybody had a job, everybody had a small car, everybody had a small apartment. Nobody had deodorant, nobody had soap. We would see lineups for like 2 miles. A lineup of people for 2 miles because there was a rumour they were selling eggs. Scarcity and want I had experienced as a child, but the absolute deprivation of an entire peoples I hadn't experienced, and that marked me and still marks me. It's not something a people should ever passively accept. In 1976 I was taken to the United States of America to visit cousins we didn't know by my somewhat odd mother. And that was a very fascinating thing for me. I had been once out of the country to Spain, and I was took out of school to go there, and I spent 7 very, very nice weeks living with cousins, and it was great, experiencing a lifestyle that I had only ever seen on the movies. Their back lot had a forest right on it. They had a local swimming pool, which was a pool, just basically a lake in the forest that everybody used. They had maple walnut ice cream, and you could eat it any time you wanted, and when it ran out they just went and bought more. That to me was the height of hedonistic luxury. It was a fascinating trip. I went to their schools. I was forced to go in my uniform by my somewhat deranged mother, which was kind of an odd experience, going to an American high school. Whereas I'd been playing rugby in February and getting frozen, they went to archery and they did swimming. One of the highlights of that trip, and it made me see the difference in the world, was going on a scout camp trip with my cousin. Now my scout camp trips in England were in canvas tents, and they would burn and boil up baked beans and sausages. These guys had a wooden house to go to. The scout leaders did all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the preparation, and showed them how to make a few knots. It really was a different world. It was like glamping for me. I didn't realize that it was like that. The funny part was the Pledge of Allegiance, because everybody stood up and they all started doing the Pledge of Allegiance at scout camp or whatever it is, and I just started and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I can't actually pledge allegiance to a traitorous government, to the Queen, right? So it was kind of an amusing thing. It taught me at the age of 11 that the world was more than my hometown, that if I worked hard and if I got myself educated, I could travel, I could live differently. And that trip I blame and thank for probably why I ended up in Canada. On a happier, more preppy note, in 2004, for one of my birthdays, I always celebrate my birthdays, I have a week off for it every year, but it was one of my major birthdays, Kitty took me to Thunder Bay, and just north of Ontario. In our terms, it's quite a long flight. I used air miles, got there for free, we stayed in the hotel, it was nice, went up for the week, planned to do some walking around, tripping and stuff like that, and there was like a 12k race up a mountain. I don't know what, every time I planned on doing a trip like this, I sucked in the race, but I enjoyed it, it was fun. I actually figured I was going to win it, and I should have been in the shape to win it, but I just had an off day, but I didn't care much. We went to the casino for the first time ever to a casino. This was 2004, and it was fascinating to see how people were just churning money in. We got free money to go there, which we found kind of amusing, and we kept the free money and had the free drinks and left. What we decided to do, and this is I think the spirit of adventure, is we decided to wander down the Thunder Bay marina area, and we asked around, and we found an old guy with a boat. We said, we want to go to, I call it Wolf Island, I still call it Wolf Island, but when I looked it up, I think what I was on about was Welcome Island. And we went there for 2 nights camping, me and Kitty, with no previous camping experience on Kitty's side really. She'd done some and I'd done some, but we'd never done solo, unsupported camping. So the guy says, sure, I'll take you there and I'll pick you up in 2 days. And so we're going across, and it seemed to take like 2 hours, 3 hours. Now I think my memory's exaggerating that. I think it was maybe half an hour. And it was very windy and it was terribly, and we hadn't told anybody we were going there. We just walked down the beach and said, can you take us there tomorrow? And he said, yeah. So we were going there and he's telling us all about his heart disease and all about his cancer, and you know, we're nice, we're talking to him. So he drops us off and it was gorgeous. So we were there on the Saturday. Gorgeous hot weather. We went skinny dipping, we put the tent up, it was fascinating. The patch of trail we put the tent on, we found out at 2 in the morning is where the elk wander through, so that was somewhat exciting because we had to redo the tent quite quickly. We saw a red fox walk by us, it was beautiful. The next day, Sunday, was gorgeous. We were sad we were leaving, but these things happen, and we waved to all the kayakers, sea kayakers that were going by, and the guy didn't show up. He was supposed to come at 6 o'clock, didn't show up. Okay. So we had the rest of our food because we didn't have much. We did not take extra rations. We didn't take any water purification. We just took a few Mars bars and a few snack foods. So we went to bed that night. The next morning was Monday morning. It was pouring down with rain and there was dense fog. And that was one of the interesting things because me and Kitty had never been in a /survival situation. So I did what I always do. I would do things differently now because I have some more knowledge. I just lay down on the dock, made myself comfortable to keep warm and waited. Conserved energy, conserved fuel. Kitty ran around in a state of terror for about 2.5 hours, despite me telling her to calm down. She wouldn't. And then eventually the guy came and picked us up. But it always left us with the thought, what would we do? Well, what would you do if he had never come? If he didn't come? You know, the guy was like 12 hours late because of the weather conditions, I guess, in Thunder Bay. What would we have done? I guess we could have tried to make it through to the next weekend and hope the weather was clear and track down a sea kayaker. There's nobody living on those islands. There were a few huts that we canoed to on the island that were abandoned. They had really old tins in, so I think we would have survived. And I planned just to canoe out into the bay a bit and get water that way. So I think it was not the disaster we were thinking it was at the time, but it taught me a lesson pre-prepping in the main, where I actually prepped for this sort of thing. Anyway, that's the 5 trips I did that changed my life. There are others that I could have talked about, but I don't want to. I didn't want to talk about war, I didn't want to talk about stuff like that, I didn't want to talk about tragedy. I just want to talk about 5 trips that I know, essentially in my core, developed me and changed me into the person I am today, for good or bad. Anyway, do you guys have any life-changing trips? You don't have to do 5, but do you have any that meant a lot to you? Au revoir, have a good day.